Today I'm going to be going over some stuff about Final IK, so let me get into that here. So my name is Voxian. I'm the creator of the Foxtar, the Avatar, the Betaprut, and the Aviantar bases for VRChat. I've been working in VRChat content for since about 2019, starting with the Foxtar in the old 2.0 days. Things were a lot different back then, and we've come a long ways. So it's absolutely exciting to be here. I am super excited to share with you guys some information about some tech that I think everyone's mostly sleeping on. As a quick disclaimer, though, I'm not affiliated with RootMotion. I just use their scripts. So what is Final IK? Specifically in the context of VRChat avatars. According to RootMotion, Final IK is a complete collection of inverse kinematic solutions for Unity. And hopefully I didn't lose you all already. Let me go into some more detail. So inverse kinematics is the process of calculating joint angles based on a start and end point. So for example, your arms. We don't have elbow trackers, or at least most of us don't have elbow trackers. So the program needs to figure out exactly where your elbows should be when it only knows your wrist location and your shoulder. So what do games use this for? Games use this to determine where your elbows and knees are. They keep your feet on the ground, especially on slopes and staircases. You can hold a weapon and while aiming at a target, and they map animations between different characters, different proportions. That's actually how we're able to get non-humanoid like looking characters into VRChat, especially ones that have like really long torsos or extended necks or things like that. There's a lot more to that. So VRChat uses Final IK, and they allow us to use it as well. So although modified, their scripts seem to behave approximately the same. They use this for mapping an avatar to your trackers, tracking automatic steps and idle, and probably a lot more that I'm really not aware of, to be honest with you. But they definitely use the scripts, though. So what scripts do they use, or what scripts do they let us use? This is the list of whitelisted components that they've posted on their website. These are all the ones that we are able to use from their collection. Not a lot of people are familiar with these or use these, so that's why I'm trying to bring them to light in this panel here today. So let me go through them all real quick. We have Aim IK, Biped IK, CCD IK, FABRIK, Full Body Biped IK, Grounder, Limb IK, Rotation Limits, Shoulder Rotator, Twist Relaxer, VRIK, IK Execution Order. There's a lot there to go over, so unfortunately I won't be able to cover them all in this panel. So today, I'll be covering the ones listed there, the ones in red. All right, so there's one more thing that we need to talk about before we get into the details of how to use it. First off, Final IK is a paid asset. This is on the Unity store. It's been on there even before VRChat was a thing. So how does this impact us, and what can we do about it? So if you own Final IK, you can use their scripts in the editor. Everything will work totally normal. And when you go to upload, as long as you're using some of the whitelisted components, everything will work in game as well. I should note, though, that there are some components that if you try to use them from Final IK, they just won't activate, or they won't even let you upload in the first place. So if you do not own Final IK, you can use what's called a stub to set up the components. VR Labs currently hosts a free stub on their GitHub, and the scripts in the editor will not work, so you will not be able to preview what you see in the editor properly. But when you go to upload in-game, it'll actually upload and work, and everything will still connect up correctly. So if you're making content with Final IK, here's the kind of workflow process. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create content using Final IK components, whether that's with a free stub or whether that's with the full paid version. Either way works. And then when you distribute your files, you share them without the scripts, and the end user then combines that with the stub to be able to upload to VRChat. I do that for my TARs, and a lot of other artists and creators use that for their content as well. All right, so let's go over some examples and generally how to apply them. So Aim IK. This is a very interesting one because it's very similar to an aim constraint, which we already have access to inside the editor. But we have a lot more functionality that you don't get in the typical aim constraints. One of the things is you can use limits. So you can actually prevent an object from moving to a certain point based on a limitation. Also, since this is an IK component, it's actually calculated at a different time than aim constraints. We can use this to our advantage, but also sometimes it causes problems. Either way, it's good to know about. So what can we use it for? We can use it for spines, tentacles, and a lot more. Because it's a set of chain that you can use, you can actually tie it to an entire spine or a tentacle, or there's a bunch of other things I'm sure we haven't even thought about yet. But it can be applied to an entire chain of objects. That's actually what I'm doing on my grappling hook here that I'll go over later. One of the things is you can use a pull vector as well. So a pull vector allows you to set an object that says, I want this to rotate in this direction. And you can get it to rotate in that particular angle. All right, next up is VRIK. So this script is a full system for mapping avatars to VR trackers. I believe this is actually what VRChat's using to connect your trackers to your body, or at least some modified version of it. One extremely important part about this is the procedural locomotion. This is the piece that I've highlighted in the slide here, and you'll see it has a bunch of settings. But what this part of the script does is whenever it senses that the character is about to fall over, it takes an automatic step and tries to keep you upright all the time. So what do you think we use this for? Yep, you guessed it, more legs. So you can do tars, ferals, have followers. There's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with this part of the script. And it'll all happen automatically. You won't even have to animate it. So using hidden armature, you can have VRIK calculate automatic steps, and it's pretty powerful. I think it's something that I would like to see more people start using. You'll notice that on the tars like mine, and also the Naruto tar and some other ones, we use this script to keep our legs stepping. All right, so there are some limitations to Final IK and VRIK specifically. One of the big limitations is scaling. So when you scale up or scale down, you can do that by naturally in VRChat, and it works great. But the steps will not. The automatic steps do not know how to scale. So if you scale up really big, your feet become really, really narrow and like tied together really, really tightly. And if you scale up small, you become like this bow-legged stance that's absolutely crazy. So that's one limitation. You would think, okay, well, that's fine. I'll just animate the properties. Well, another limitation is you can't. That's just actually a Final IK limitation in general. You can't animate those properties at runtime without using another script. And unfortunately, on avatars, we can't use any scripts. So there are some solutions to this. On my tar, for example, I actually have multiple VRIK scripts, and I just toggle them on and off. There's a lot of other ways to handle it too that I won't be covering this particular talk. I just wanted to bring it up because, hey, it's something that you'll run into if you decide to use these scripts. Okay, so next up is the grounders. This is one that I actually will be talking about quite a bit today. But what does a grounder do? So a grounder searches for the nearest surface and keeps the feet touching and rotated to match. So this is how they keep feet working on slopes and staircases and things like that. Also works for animations to make sure that you're actually planted on the floor even though your character is taller or shorter and that kind of stuff. But rather than explain exactly how this is set up, let's demonstrate. So you may be wondering what this turret is on my back. So rather than just looking cute or intimidating, depending on your opinion of this guy, this little guy is here to show you how many of these components can come together and make something that's meaningful. So how do we use this guy? So I'm going to go step over here real quick. I have an assistant with me today. Fish, if you could come up here real quick. All right, Fish is going to help me demonstrate a little bit. So first thing you do is, for this particular prefab, you'll make a pointer with your finger, and then touch your chest, and it should activate. And at that point now, I'm actually aiming this little guy around. Let me kind of point him towards you a little bit. And I can actually aim him around, and he follows wherever I'm pointing. Now, one thing that's really important about this is that this is actually not a particle, this laser here. This is just a mesh that's attached to wherever I'm pointing to, and it's searching out for wherever the nearest ground is in front of me. So in this particular case, it's finding the ground in front of fish over there, my friend. So I'm going to go ahead and fire him off. So we're going to make a point. We're going to make a gun to fire him off. There he goes. So now we've got the grappling hook over there, and he's tied to my butt still. And the grappling hook can actually pull other people to you, like this. All right. Thank you so much, fish, for your help. Get reset up over here. All right, so now you can see how this can also just, I bet you didn't know that this guy is also a matchmaker, bringing people together. All right, so let's dig into how this works. So the first thing we want to go over is the aim IK, and this is the script that's allowing me to get him to aim at whatever location I would like. You do have to have a start and an end location for this to work, and because of that, I'll have to go over the grounder part second. But the quick summary here is that it's allowing his chain of movements to follow whatever he wants to aim at. All right, so let me go over each individual field here real quick here. Hopefully I can read those. Let's see. So we have fixed transforms. That allows us to kind of reset the transforms on update. Kind of a little complicated feature, but basically it reminds us that we can reset or determine where we were last and continue from there. You have your target, your pull vector. Your pull vector is where you want to rotate to, which we're not using in this case. You have a pull target, or you have an aim transform, which is what you're actually aiming with. That's the end of the turret. We have some offsets and things like that, some tolerance iterations. But the big thing I want to highlight is at the bottom there we have 3 bones. So it's actually an aim constraint with 3 pieces that we're moving back and forth. So I talked about those rotation limits earlier. This is the part right here. So these rotation limits allow us to prevent his movement from causing clipping. Specifically, you'll notice that when he aims around me to the other side, he'll flip to the other side of me. That's because the limits are preventing him from being able to actually interact with me and go through me. Otherwise, he'd be poking through my chest. All right, next up is FABRIK. FABRIK. That's an acronym that stands for something else. Oh boy, I can't remember that right now. But it's an IK component that uses just general basic IK. So this one here is attached to some legs that are on the end of my lasers. So at the end of each of his turrets and my finger, there's actually an invisible leg that has a thigh, a knee, and a foot. And in the picture there, you'll see they're really, really far out. What that does is it allows us to search for the ground at any point during that whole length of line there. This is a feature that's called. Apologize real quick here. It's called raycasting. I'm sorry, apologize for that. A little blanking here. Yeah, it's called raycasting. It's a feature that's actually pretty common within 3D game development stuff. We don't get to have access to it very often inside of VR chat, so it's good that we actually have a chance to use it here in this particular case. Okay, next up is the grounder itself. So now we have something that we can attach to the grounder script. The grounder is the one that actually does the raycasting. This script, I won't go over all the details of it, but you can choose the weight and a bunch of other settings. Some important things are the max step, which is the kind of the distance that it searches for. Because if you have it set to infinity, it will just kind of just latch on to the end of the universe, and you'll never actually be able to see what it's doing. So you have to set that to a fairly reasonable distance. That's also one of the reasons why I can't just shoot at a target insanely far away. There is a limit to how far I can go. One of the other things too is you can choose the layers that it associates with. So each world has a layer system that it's able to choose kind of what they tie to. And in the case of mine, I just have it set to the environment and the default layer. So it's looking for anything that the world creator set up as default or environment. Last up is the world constraint. So this is a pretty common script. I think a lot of people are using this already. This is not an IK component. This is just a parent constraint. But I wanted to call out to it because that's how I'm able to lock in the location at the end of the chain. It's relatively easy to set up. In fact, VR Labs has an example of this already that you can just pull in as a prefab. But basically what we do here is that we're constantly following the same location, but we have it inside of a world constraint. And then when we say fire, we release the constraint and keep it in world space. And that allows us to lock that location and we know where that is. And that's how I can make sure I fire and aim at that spot. Okay, so the last thing to cover is the Animator controller itself. I won't be going into a lot of detail about this because this is a pretty straightforward part that I think a lot of creators are familiar with, but the basic premise here is we're just using an idle loop on the left-hand side. And then whenever you activate the gesture and touch the right conditions, we go into an aiming mode. And then while in aiming mode, that's when we're actually pointing at the right location. I do have a pause feature in there that allows me to stop the motion halfway through. And then when we actually fire, we do a prep fire, and then we actually fire the grappling hook. Once we fire it, we lock into a latched-in state, and then we return back out when we're trying to pull it back out. Okay, so that's just about everything I've got for today, but I want to give a quick shout out to the following people here real quick, just to kind of cover everything. So Laser Raptor here, I would like to thank them for developing and testing many of these techniques. I actually didn't quite solve out all of these problems on my own. There's a lot of people that have been involved in this process, and in part of that too is just the virtual limbs community in general. They've been very supportive in trying to get this all figured out, and I definitely thank you guys so much for your support here. I'd like to thank Fish for the illustrations and also the demo. Thank you so much. And Azelion for creating the scuttle gun. So this gun here, I did not make the gun myself. It's posted by a friend of mine, but I did make the grappling hook. And the grappling hook and its components I will be putting on to my Gumroad page for free when we're all said and done here. So you can get that, take a look at it, open it up, poke around at it, maybe find some flaws, hopefully, and then let me know on my Discord. So at this point, thank you so much for your time. I'm excited to see what people do with these scripts. We're going to do a quick Q&A right now, but after the event, if you have any ideas or if you want any help or if you have any questions, feel free to join the Virtual Limbs Discord that I have linked here. We would love to see what you're up to and see what other ideas the community comes up with. So at this point, I'll pass it over to our hosts.
I'm here to help you out with the Q&A. As you mentioned, the Intro to Final IK Q&A channel is open on Discord. Please drop any questions you have in there. I actually had a question to ask you first. What got you into TARS and doing Final IK in the first place?
Oh, yeah. So I've been interested in TARS for a very long time. The big thing for me was the Chikat stories from way back when. That whole aesthetic and feeling, and they were all kind of space themed as well, which is perfect for our theme here. That's really the big thing that got me on it, was just the idea, the stories behind it all.
All right, thank you so much. I've got a question here from Wishdream. Is there a way to check if distance does not reach a point on raycast?
Yeah, there is an overstep falls on overstep falls. Let me go back to that page real quick. Apologize. It's on the grounder script. My mistake.
You're good.
So on the grounder, there's a checkbox here for overstep falls down, and what that does is if it detects that it's fallen over and missed a raycast, then it will reset. I think that's pretty much the question you're looking for. So what you would do there is if it oversteps and falls down, you'd have a contact or something to be able to say, hey, we've failed to find something.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's see. Oh, we have a question here from Happy Robot. Is there a functional reason you have the laser distance limited, or is it just a design thing?
Yeah. So the laser actually just stretches a mesh over and over again, so it can actually go to infinite distance. But I didn't want it to clip onto something that was like way in the distance. In fact, I had a little bit of problem here with that because there's some invisible things inside this world. So I just wanted to make sure that I could control how far I was searching for. So I have it set to about 6 or 7 meters. It could be set much higher. Don't get me wrong. It's just you'd have to be in a world with very little going on with it.
Is there a performance consideration for setting the distance for the laser?
The distance shouldn't matter because it has a iteration step to it. The iterations does matter for performance. I will say that I had to bump the iterations of this particular project up some because I found that it wasn't reaching the right location at the right time. I should also mention on the topic of performance, though, the aim IK specifically is actually more performant than using a aim constraint, especially if you're using multiple on a chain. So in the case of performance, you'll actually gain a little bit of performance from aim IK. In terms of the grounder, though, there's really no other equivalent feature to that. It does hurt performance very, very slightly, but if you keep your iterations low, it should be fine.
All right. Thank you so much. I've got a question here from Janus. What's the most interesting project you've done with Final IK, in your opinion?
Oh yeah. So I had a commission at one point where they would like to have a like a leg stick feature where it's not something in VR chat right now, but the idea was that if you were to place space lower than the ground, or if you went beneath the ground in any way, shape, or form, that your foot would continue to stay stuck to the ground even if you were below it. And that was an interesting one to me because I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. I would love to see if VR chat could do something like that, but let's see what I can do. And it was fun to work on.
All right. Thank you so much. I've got a question here from Shally asking, any tips for newbies who are very inexperienced with Unity and such?
Okay, so yeah, in general, when you're working with Unity in the first place, it's good to kind of just get your feet wet with it a little bit. A good place to start is just accessories. See if you can put on some accessories and get them to position properly on your avatar. Maybe also try to get like some controls where maybe you can toggle them and grab things and move things and then start building from there. That's kind of where I started, honestly, was just trying to get some basic things working like that. And then you work your way into the more complicated stuff like what I'm talking about in this particular panel. You could just jump full in and try to learn Final IK. You may have some troubles just trying to get the basics under your belt first, though. So I do recommend getting through some props and accessories first.
Fantastic. I've got a fun question here from Swiriko. How many people have asked if they can ride you since making the tar?
Pretty much everyone that has never seen a tar will be like, oh my God, can I ride the tar? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can ride the tar. I actually have 2 seats on mine too, because I thought it would be fun. Here, I can do that real quick even.
You can bring a friend.
Seats. I get a little longer. I'm not clipping out.
So you do. Yep. Two seats.
Yep.
Let's see. We've got a question here from Draka asking, do you have any tutorials for people to look up and research as and when needed?
Yeah, so for Final IK, I don't know if there's a whole lot out there right now. Most of the tutorials that you'll find are actually related to just game dev in general. They're very technical and a little bit complicated to figure out. I would like to start making tutorials, but at this point, I don't think there's too many out there for Final IK in general. And that's part of why I started this panel or wanted to host this panel. Just to get kind of the word out there, and hopefully in the future I can start making some tutorials, or maybe somebody else can jump on that as well.
It's definitely appreciated. Let's see. We've got a question here from Hero of None. Is there a way to get a grounder to work on a ceiling or a wall if you want to climb up on it? Yes, absolutely. So my laser pointer actually is directional, and I'm aiming at anywhere that I would like to go, not just straight down. The trick to that, let me go ahead and cancel that.
The big trick to that was with the grounder, there is a rotate solver checkbox on this page here. I'll go ahead and leave that up for a little bit. But that rotate solver checkbox allows you to rotate the entire orientation of where it's trying to ground to. That was one of the important things for this project as well. Otherwise, it just defaults to down at the floor.
All right, fantastic. Let's see, we got another question here from Volker asking, I've run into some jittering and network desync when attaching a contact to the end of a final IK raycast. Are there any troubleshooting tips you might have to mitigate this?
Yeah, there are definitely some jitter related to that. One thing that I definitely recommend is don't ever put anything inside of the IK components directly. So if you have a contact and you want to attach it to the end of the grappling hook or something like that, which actually, believe it or not, when I first set this up, I actually tried that. I ended up not needing it for my purpose, but the best way to do it though is to have those components outside of the armature for the final IK scripts, and then constrain them back into where they need to be. So in the case of a contact, you would have the contact self-assigned and then give it a parent constraint back to wherever it needs to be inside of the other script. That should remove a lot of the jitter that you're seeing. If you'd like to go even further, there's you can increase the iterations and a bunch of other stuff. There's some other things you can do as well. But that's the quick and easy way to do it, though.
Fantastic. I've got a question here from RuneFox237. For someone who's planning on using Final IK for avatar creation, do you recommend buying it to be able to test in the editor, or should they stick to using the stub?
Good question. So I will agree that using the stub to develop an avatar from scratch is quite complicated, because when you try to open up the scripts, they will not look like you see on the screen right now. They will look more generic, and they won't have all the fields available for you. So you may have some trouble trying to assign everything correctly. That's really the big limitation from what I can see, other than being able to test it, but I guess it's not too big a deal to just upload every time to test. In general, yes, I would recommend people to get the full version if you're trying to develop an avatar. But on the other hand, too, though, I would also recommend try it. See what you can do without that as well. I should mention too that the script is $90, I believe, by default. You can get it on sale sometimes too, but you don't need any of that. You can just use it as is without it actually purchasing it too.
Wonderful. I've got a question here from Nyanka. I know where Final IK can be used for more limbs, but what about detachable limbs for zombies and robots and such?
Yeah, so detachable limbs actually might be a better thing to do with the upcoming constraint updates for VRChat. I didn't really get a chance to mention that in my slides, but VRChat has announced that they're going to do a constraint update of some kind in the next few months. When they do that, they've said that they're going to give us what's called local constraints. And that'll allow us to take a position of an arm or something and then use that to map it to something that's not actually parented to your chest. So in the case of a detached arm, you could just use this on the detached arm and then have that attached to a fizz bone or a rigid body or something, and you could throw it at somebody. And you could say, need a hand. That'd be kind of fun.
Excellent. Wonderful answer. Let's see. Keo Linak asks, how would you go with making mechanical joints for a prosthetic arm?
Yes, mechanical joints. Actually, so the Final IK scripts and rotation limits are a wonderful way to handle mechanical joints, because you can just take the final thing you're trying to aim. So let's say they have an entire mechanical leg or something. You could put a whole bunch of aim IK on it, or even just one, and then kind of like carefully assign it. And then you could get everything on the pistons to move correctly and limit it properly, so that way it can't rotate in odd ways. So the limitations are actually the benefit in this particular case, because you can limit your movements, and that's a huge benefit to making mechanical parts for sure.
All right. Fantastic question here from Austrian. Is there a community, like a Discord group or a website we could join, that helps people figure out problems with Final IK?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll throw a few things out there. So first off, Root Motion does have their own official Discord. I don't want to discount that at all. They have more focus on game dev though. So if you want to have VRChat specific, I definitely recommend joining the Virtual Limbs Discord. That's the one that I run. There are other places to go as well. Specifically, I'd like to give a call out to Scion and the Spider Discord. That's actually one of the places that was in the early stages of development for me as well, was finding out how people wanted to do driders. And they got it nailed down pretty good. So between a couple different Discords, I'm sure there's some places you can find, but I would definitely recommend starting at the Virtual Limbs Discord.
All right. We've got a question here from Dipole. You mentioned keeping contacts outside of the armature used by Final IK. Does that mean it's typical to have multiple separate armatures in a project using it? Or do you mean keeping the contact, etc., outside of the specific transforms being manipulated by Final IK?
So yeah, I guess I should clarify there. I'm mostly referring to keeping those components outside of the chain that's being controlled by Final IK. And also keeping it outside of your hip bone, because your hip bone is being controlled by Final IK components inside of VRChat as well. So you want to keep all of those components outside of there, but inside of your avatar root. Typically, I just make these inside of Unity as empty game objects and things like that. But you could make them all as separate individual pieces within like Blender, and then import them over and things like that. I'm not sure exactly what it would look like if you tried doing it that way. It would probably look like a bunch of different armatures. But when it comes to Unity, you just right-click and create a new game object, and that's more of what I'm referring to there.
Thank you for elaborating. Lane asks, do the stub components work on local test avatars?
That's a very good question that I haven't really tried very much. Yeah, the build and test feature. I believe it does the last time I checked, but I also haven't used that particular feature myself in a very long time. There was a period of time where that wasn't working all that great, and I just kind of got used to just uploading fully every single time. But my understanding is that I believe it does work in the build and test mode.
All right. Got Chicat Firestorm asking, what made you decide to make a multi-limb tar, and what kind of bugs did you find and solve when making it?
So what making it though in the first place, I wanted to make it because nobody else had it. I wanted to see some tars in VRChat, hadn't seen them yet. But in terms of bugs though, man, there's been a lot of bugs. I can't get into all of that right now, certainly, but it's taken about 2 to 3 years to get this model working the way I'd like it, and I'm still improving it. So there's still new things. When it comes to the Final IK components specifically, since that's what this talk is about, the biggest issues I had were related to execution order, and I didn't really cover that in this talk because it's kind of a complicated topic. But it's basically the order of which everything is calculated. And depending on where things are located, and depending on the execution order of what those things are, they might calculate in a way where they do nothing. And they might calculate in a way where they jitter like crazy. So that's one of the biggest issues that I wanted to bring up. I don't have a screenshot or slide of that script, but it just chooses the order in which things are calculated.
All right. I've actually got a couple people asking if we can get a demonstration of the rider feature. If you want to turn your seat on, I can give it a try.
Yeah, sure. That should be on right now.
All right.
I don't know how this is going to work with the...
Yeah, I'm clipping a little bit, but it works.
You might be clipping a little bit, yeah. So yeah, there's that. I actually did a lot I with my seats specifically where they're smoothed, and they're also able to be rotated too. So I actually can let me turn that up all the way to kind of demonstrate it like really well. I can also spin them around too and things like that. But if I move over here, you'll see that they're kind of like smoothly coming to me. Things like that.
Neat. I've never seen the smoother before on a seat. That's very cool.
Yeah, and it's level. It's leveled too. So if I rotate, you won't get leveled. You won't flip around.
Thank you for the demonstration.
There you go. So yes, you can ride the tar. There you go.
Ride to battle. Or more likely, to hang with your friends. Let's see. We've got another question from Happy Robot here. What are the majority of constraints used on tar avatars?
Constraints, I'm assuming you're referring to like parent constraints, position constraints, and stuff like that. The biggest things that I'm using for constraints is I need to be able to constrain the beginning and the end locations of where I'm trying to use the IK for. So in the case of like my my grounders on my finger and on my gun, I'm constraining the beginning point, and I'm also constraining the end point. And the end point is going to be like a final number that I'm getting, but I'm constraining to that whenever I'm doing it. And then for the root joint, it's just it's constrained to the tip of the gun itself.
All right. Had a couple of people mention FABRIK. Would you be able to elaborate like on what that means and what it is?
I blanked on the name of it. I'm so sorry. The acronym for it.
It's a forward and backward, reverse, inverse kinematic.
Thank you so much. That I should have put that in my notes, but that is correct. Though, yeah, it's forward and backwards. What that means is that it's calculating downwards and upwards across the chain to figure out the final location. It's kind of like a 2-pass rather than a single pass, basically. It's really stable in comparison to some of the other options for IK components, and that's why I'm using it in this example here.
All right. Let's see. I think we're currently out of questions, but we can pause for a moment. I see several people typing.
Okay.
I've got a question here from Luna's Soft Paws. How does one use Final IK to grab limbs? For example, an arm, or somebody wants to grab your leg and move it. Is it possible?
Yeah, so you could use position constraints and parent constraints to be able to do that. What you would end up doing is you take the final location that you're trying to connect to. So, for example, the end of your leg and that aim bone, and then you would parent constrain that to something else, whether it's the end of a fizz bone chain or your own wrist. You can just change the ownership of that particular constraint, and you can make the whole chain follow whatever you'd like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Happy Robot asked another question. When it comes to constraining, is there a reason you can have objects as children? Is there an exclude feature? I'm sorry, I think you meant can't have objects. Is there an exclude feature?
So there is exclude feature as part of Final IK, at least not that I'm aware of. So the only way to do that is to actually have them outside and then constrain back. You can keep things inside of there as well. There are things like, for example, mesh bones, things like that you can actually put inside there and everything just works just fine. But mainly it's related to like if you put fizz bones in there or if you put contacts. There's a lot of other kinds of components that will not work properly. That's why for this demonstration I was like, okay, just keep everything constrained and outside of the armature. But you could put a lot of stuff inside of there as well. In fact, Laser has experimented with some techniques of actually layering IK on top of other components. I don't want to give too much information about that right now because it's very experimental. But if you'd like more information, once again, go into the Discord. We're kind of always experimenting and tinkering with things as well.
We've got another question here from Akari. What about parabolic paths? Could you use the raycast to generate something more of an arc path for the grapple?
The raycast that's done is a kind of like a spread, basically. So it starts with just a single point coming out, and it also does do a cone spread, but it doesn't do an arc. If you wanted to do like a calculated arc of some kind, you may have to do something a little more complicated that I'm not really sure of off the top of my head right now. I'm kind of thinking like maybe rigid bodies or something like that. But there's probably a way to do it. I'd have to really think that through though.
All right. For the final IK components, is it actually possible to manage them using like standalone prefabs that you can just like drag and drop onto your avatar?
Yes. Yeah. All of the regular prefab system of Unity can be used for Final IK components, and that's part of what I'm doing in my avatars as well. So you can make a component that's like, hey, this thing does a particular function, like I'm doing with my grappling hook, and then you can give those to other people, and then all they have to do is just kind of mess with them a little bit to get it to work the way they'd like it. That'll make a lot more sense, I think, once you open up the files for my grappling hook, because you'll see, oh, this is just a prefab. You just attach this to there, and then everything works. And then you can kind of dig into it and figure out how that's all set up later.
All right. Let's see. Oh, see someone else typing. We've exhausted the questions so far.
It's a complicated topic, I understand completely, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up. But at the same time, a lot of people that think are probably looking at this and going, huh, huh, you know.
Yeah, I
So
think
hopefully
they'll have
the
to
thought
dig
process.
into it, and then you'll get
Yeah.
a lot of questions.
Yep, absolutely.
I've actually got a question here from Nookie Hyena asking, what change to VR chat constraints do you think would let you get the most creative?
Ooh, so the biggest thing I'm excited for is that local constraint option. I'm actually already doing that on my avatars. So when I'm doing the puppet mode like this, which hopefully activated properly, this is using my own version of local constraints to do this. This is something that I love to do, and I think it's a lot of fun, but we don't have access to it unless you're just like it's a lot of work to set that up. You have to have 3 constraints for every single bone, and you have to have a set of states that are going back and forth between 2 states constantly to try and trigger and find your location. So for me, that little checkbox that says local is a big deal. And I hope that people realize that when they finally get those components. In terms of other IK component specific stuff, I would like to see some more about like the execution order of things, because it is very difficult to attach things properly right now. You have to kind of keep things separate. But maybe if the constraint system got updated, maybe we could do more and it would be better.
I actually had a question about Final IK, and it looks like somebody else asked the same thing here of none. Can Final IK be used on Quest mode, the standalone
no.
VR chat?
Yeah, no, you cannot use any Final IK components on Quest or on the Android built versions. It won't let you upload, just like it doesn't with constraints and a bunch of other things like that. So that is one limitation of the system, is it's PC only.
I see. I believe VR chat constraints are coming to Quest, but we don't know how many we'll get, so we'll find out in a few months.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. Because I wasn't sure exactly, because they kind of haven't fully announced.
It's always possible. Things could change.
Yep.
Adux asks, can Final IK be used for things like long tongues?
Yeah, actually, so tentacles would be kind of like in the same category. You could definitely use that for that kind of stuff. Just make a really long chain and then use some aim IK for that. I would recommend breaking it up into multiple parts, though, if you decide to do that, because it'll let you kind of get a good arc with it. And that might be a solution to that grounder arcing thing that we were talking about earlier, too.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a good solution for that, too.
Keo Linak asks, how do your hind legs move on their own when you don't move?
When I don't move,
I think
so
like when you're like rotating your body. Yeah.
When I'm rotating, yeah. So that's using that VRIK component that I talked about earlier. I'll go ahead and bring back that slide. Just give me 1 second. Way back here. VRIK right here, this script is what's allowing me to do that. Specifically, there's a locomotion portion of that script. That script will look for when your hips are falling over and then take steps. And that's exactly what I'm using on the back legs right now.
And it looks great. Blue Cat 52 is actually asking, when the grappling hook is released on the Gumroad page, how much will it be? He really wants to experiment.
It'll be free. It'll be totally free. Be totally free. I made the assets myself. I'm just distributing that for totally free.
Well, there you go. If you're in the audience, go grab it. Have fun. Happy Robot asks, with the arc, does that mean you could do things like ropes and chains? Things following on to the earlier question.
Yes, absolutely. You could do that kind of stuff. It would be hard to tune, though, because if for some reason the chain or rope gets to the location it needs to be before you've actually finished the whole arc, it'll kind of collapse in on itself. So you may have to kind of tune that to try and get the weighting right. But it could be used for that kind of stuff, absolutely.
Lucky Pointer asks, does the TAR use Unity's Mechanim humanoid avatar with constraints to another armature, or is it something else like bipedal IK?
It is its own thing. The VRIK is actually what I'm using on this one. That script is pretty similar to the Mechanim and that kind of stuff. It's just Final IK's implementation of that kind of process. It looks for your wrists, it looks for your head bone, and it can also do hips and feet and stuff. But it'll look for a few tracking points, and then it'll just try and figure out all the rest of it from there. And that's what that script is used for. It's very similar to what you're talking about there.
We've got an impressive number of TARs in the audience. Let's see. This is sort of related to the mechanical limb here, but Mike was asking if the IK system can solve things like piston movements in a mechanical avatar.
Yes, absolutely. AIM-IK and limb-IK can be used for that kind of stuff. I didn't mention limb-IK in any of my discussions here, but it's a good tool for using like just anything that's got only 3 points. It allows you to keep the rotation of the knee joint kind of more under control than just using another object to control that.
I think when we talked about the long tongues, people were like, "But what about tails?"
Yes.
Using IK for that.
Like grabbable tails with like a hand on the end or something. That'd be so much fun. I would love to see that. I haven't quite seen something like that myself yet, but I think it can be done.
All right.
Just bump this back up.
Let's see. Blue Cat 52 is asking, is there a story behind what inspired the grappling hook?
So yeah, the grappling hook was mainly related to this this amazing little asset that a friend of mine made, Azaline made. This scuttle gun here was like just a really cool little follower. I was like, oh my god, what happens if you put that on the back of a tar? You could like shoot things. And then when we started talking about this this demo here, I was like, you know, that might be a really good demo, is to shoot like a grappling hook or something out. So I would say it was definitely inspired by the friend of mine.
We've got someone else here asking, can you use fizz bones to set the positions for your IK to solve into, or does final IK not work with that?
You could have a constraint that that attaches to the end of a fizzbone or something like that. Absolutely, you can totally do that. You might be able to do it directly as well. I just don't want to guarantee that until you experiment with it. But using a constraint, I know for sure you definitely can do that.
All right. Erebus is asking, do your legs work when you're crouching?
Oh yeah,
demonstrate
yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yep. Hopefully, Brian. Whoop.
I think I've seen
Yep,
people sit as well with it. I really like the
there's a bunch of
sitting
poses and things like that too.
Yeah, they're all throughout the audience.
Yep.
Keller is asking, I've heard the final IK used by VRChat is older than the official release. Is there any specific release version you recommend for use in VRChat?
So I personally always use the newest version of Final IK, but to clarify though, you are correct. Final IK, the inside of VRChat is an older version, but it's using the same ID and stuff. So whenever you go to upload, the only changes you'll see is any features that were added later on just won't work. There's a few things specifically. I think there's a plant feet or something inside of VRIK that doesn't work. I don't want to go through that right now, but there's a few features that have been changed over the years. I recommend using the newest version of Final IK and then using that to update. If you're using the stub is usually updated. I should also mention too that even if the stub is taken down or whatever from VR Labs, it is something that anyone can generate that has the full version. So if for some reason that disappears, we can always recreate it and get it working.
All right. Akari is asking, you mentioned the ability to rotate the grounding. Does this mean there's a way to have an avatar that appears to walk along a wall?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could make an object that is pointed towards the walls, and then your avatar is actually attached to that, and then you could be on the ceilings and spinning around. That'd be fun.
Crawl around, mess with your friends. Somebody's asking if you could show how a tar sits.
Oh yeah. So let me do that real quick. So this is one way. There's a lot of ways though.
All right. I think we are functionally out of time for questions. You want to take it away?
Yeah, of course. Thank you all so much for listening in, and I'm excited to see what all you guys do. So just have at it, show us your creations, and I'm excited to see what we go from here.
Bye, everyone.